Welcome back, everybody. This is Brother Ian here too. We're finishing up our Magus spell list. This is part 3 of the 3-part videos. We have the Eldritch Arcana updated mod, of course, and called the Wild mods that we're still using. This is why we're doing this video, because it gives you an idea of the type of spells you'd have access to if you played any type of Magus. Now, of course, that doesn't include all their spells, even though I said we were covering all spells. Remember, that doesn't include spells that we get from, say, an Eldritch Scion Bloodline. They may fall outside of this list. For example, this also doesn't count spells that they could get for free, ones that fill out the wizard spell list or the sorcerer spell list. So again, grain of salt here, but for any Magus, you'd have access to these spells as you level up, ones that you could pick is the point. So we're going to cover level 5 and 6 now. So level 5, we have Acidic Spray, Baleful Polymorph, Beast Shape 3, Cloud Kill, Cone of Cold, Elemental Body 2, Fire Snake, Greater Blade Dash, Overland Flight, Vampiric Shadow Shield. We're getting very thin here. Not a lot of spells to pick from. And as far as new spells added to this list, the only one that I see is Greater Blade Dash. And there's been changes, of course. For example, Beast Shape 3 has a change to it. But by and large, that's about it. Greater Blade Dash, though, is pretty useful, as you'll see. And we've coded these. If you haven't watched my other videos, I highly recommend you do so. The ones that are underlined are ones that have saving throws associated with them. The ones with asterisks behind their name, like Cloud Kill, for example, have no spell resistance associated with them. That's extremely helpful for someone like me that can make a decision like, hey, I'm not going to be the best spell caster ever. Maybe I'm going to be a subpar caster because I double dipped or I went Dragon Disciple or something like that, where I'm not going to get full spell progression. So having no real ability to spell penetrate, I'd want spells that have no spell resistance, right? Same with saving throws. It kind of draws my attention to the fact that there might be a way to lessen the effect of these spells. So I want to have like spell focus, greater spell focus, probably in these schools. So at the very bottom, you see that I've broken them down by school category. So A for abjuration, C for conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation for V, I is illusion, N for necromancy, and T for transmutation. Again, much like we saw in the previous videos, not much in the way of abjuration, no divination, enchantment, or illusion really to speak of. But conjuration, evocation, even transmutation make a decent showing. Necromancy is at least there, but that's only because of the Vampiric Shadow Shield, and it's not my favorite, as you'll see. But again, this helps draw my attention. I see how many spells there are, how many spells have saving throws associated with that specific school. So again, if I wanted to be an evoker or a conjurer, this might make sense with the level 5 picks that we're looking at here today. Acidic Spray. Let's talk about them individually now. Acidic Spray is one of my best level 5 spells for damaging, and the reason for that is twofold. One is it's nice AoE damage. It's not teammate friendly, but it is the only one on the list for this level that ticks for damage, and the tick is only one. If they fail their first initial save, then they'll actually take half damage after that first round. So they get hit for 15d6 of damage, best case scenario, 20d6 if you intensify it, and then half of that on the next follow-up tick. Of course, a saving throw will reduce the damage to half for the first hit, and then, of course, they will not get this subsequent follow-up tick. So that's kind of a bummer, but compared to the others, I'd rather take the chances that that's going to hit. And again, Conjuration, if I'm going to be a subcaster of any kind, Conjuration is usually the spell school to focus on, because there's a lot of spells, not this one, but a lot of spells that have no spell resistance that are Conjuration spells, because they're physical, tangible substances. It seems weird that Acidic Spray doesn't fall in this category, but it's what it is. Again, it has a decent range. It's a little fiddly as it's a what I call a line attack or a beam attack. It's not a ray spell. It's a narrow cone, if you will. So because it's a straight 50-foot line, it's a little hard to line up, but if you're playing solo, it's super easy because you just run down a goddamn hallway, let the bastards chase you, you turn around, stop and shoot, and boom, you hit like a bunch of dudes in a straight beam line, because the AI in this game is dumbasses. So that's kind of nice. Again, we can intensify this spell, as I mentioned before, so you can actually get it to a solid amount of damage, and it's a solid spell pick. Baleful Polymorph. This is an insta-kill spell, sort of. You basically, if they fail their check, they basically get turned into a goddamn dog. They can't attack it, they can't cast spells. Now, that's not to say that being that it's a curse that it couldn't be removed. So if someone Baleful Polymorphs one of your teammates, you can remove the effect. Your team is not just missing a person now forevermore. But it's still one of those where the bad guys are less likely, I find, to use things like remove curse on their teammates. So it is, for all intents and purposes, a take a guy out of a fight spell. There was an issue in the past, I don't remember checking this, but there was an issue in the past where if you turn them into a dog, you lose all their gear. Even when they die, they stay a dog, so you never get their gear. But I think the modder fixed that, where it's associated with a dead dog's body. I know that sounds weird to say out loud, but it's what it is. It is a proper save or suck spell. It's a transmutation spell, so I mean you really have to be heavy into transmutation, I would say, to make sure it works. But a fortitude save means that it's pretty useful against people like the wizard caster types, or hell, even the reflux ninja bastards don't have a whole lot of fortitude saves, so it'd work on them potentially. The range is kind of crap with it being close range, so that's kind of only a real downside on this one, other than the fact that, of course, it doesn't work on incorporeal targets, so no ghost dogs for you guys. Beast Shape 3, nothing really to talk about here other than the two forms. You have Smilodon or Huge Mastodon. For those of you that don't know what that is, the Smilodon, of course, is a saber-toothed tiger. The Mastodon is the giant fucking woolly mammoth elephant. They're what you would expect. I mean, they attack a lot, especially the Smilodon, but it's one of those where it's a lot like Beast Shape 1 and 2 when it comes to the uses and issues associated with them. What I mean by that is, remember, you lose your gear, you lose your weapon, or your armor, I should say, and your weapon when you're in these forms. Especially if you're a sword saint, this is something you would definitely not want to do. There's other things associated with them that's kind of annoying as well. You know, like some of the buffs that you get are pretty nice, but you can't cast spells in these forms. So, in the grand scheme of things, you're probably not using it at this stage. The other ones, I made a case for them because you're such a low level, getting like one attack around, maybe two, and then suddenly turning into like a leopard form where you're getting like 3 attacks in a round at such an early level. That's actually quite powerful. But now at this point, you're probably at 2 attacks for sure around, getting real close to getting 3. You're probably not wanting to shift into one of these forms, in my estimation anyway. Cloud Kill, decent spell. Vanilla version of this game, of course. Everyone has access to this one. It's a nice poison spell. I mean, it even says so in the spell descriptor. So again, immunity to poison is a thing here. Has a nice range, no spell resistance. Again, another conjuration spell. Very useful spell in my opinion. It is a save or suck spell. However, it has variables associated with it. So depending on what level the target is, could mean instant death or just continual con damage. And even if they make their save, which is the beautiful part of this spell, even if they make their save, they will take con damage. So when you're fighting those god-awful troll motherfuckers, they're just like beefy sons of bitches that have a fortitude save through the fucking roof because their con stat's like 40 or something crappy. You can cast this spell at distance or be immune to it, say with delay poison or communal delay poison on you and your team. Stand in the cloud will drift away based on the way you're facing at the end of your turn, so 10 feet every round. So if you turn around facing the other way, like your back to the troll, it'll drift backwards or forward, I guess, still based on the way you're facing. So it allows you to control the cloud, so to speak. I didn't notice any cloud-based effects in the cloud, so they didn't change that one as far as that's concerned. So it's not like a obscuring mist or anything like that. But again, I wasn't particularly paying attention, but I did pay attention for another cloud spell coming up here in a moment. So this one is still a solid one to hide in as far as I'm concerned, as long as you're immune to that poison. And remember, you do need to be immune. You don't just have to have the best fortitude save ever, because if you keep reading here with enough HD, even if you make the fortitude save, you're taking half con damage. So, 1d4 jumps to half of that. So obviously they'd round down, but you're likely to still lose a point of constitution every round, and that's just not good. So be careful with this spell is my advice to you. Cone of Cold, another solid choice for AoE damage for this level. This has a nice 50-foot cone, one of the biggest cones in the game. Nice range, so it's really nice in that regard. You can intensify it, so 15d6 go all the way up to 20d6. Notice I even added another category here, and this was applicable for other spells earlier that we didn't talk about, but at this point, because you're hitting so many targets with it, I felt it was worth mentioning. You can add another component to it, meta magic style, called Rhyme. It's a new one added from these mods as well. Rhyme is the one where literally, if it does cold damage, the target literally gets entangled by the spell because of ice that basically encases upon them. So think about what entangled does to your targets from a web spell. We're not talking about paralysis. We're talking about like a penalty to dex, penalty to movement, or at least can't move. I think they're anchored to the ground. Just a variety of fuck you things that happen to the target. And again, softens them up for other stuff because, again, lower dex means lower reflex saves, lower armor, a variety of ways to basically soften up big groups of guys. And while sure we could have used Ryan, for example, on a snowball spell, something that we would have talked about in the very first video, and I didn't, that's only one target at a time. This one is massive groups of dudes. Now, obviously, it's not teammate friendly, and of course, it's a saver half damage spell. We literally can cut that damage down significantly, and that's a real problem with these types of spells because of the reflex save. Elemental Body 2. Now, this is my favorite. I mentioned this in the past, but it was worth re-mentioning here. Elemental Body spell. And the reason for this is two reasons. One, the modder has changed it where you can now cast spells in this form. And that's a big boon for you. The other is you literally have just the right synergy of the best abilities for the 4 different forms that you choose. So remember, you can turn into a fire elemental, air, water, or earth elemental in these with this spell. 1 per casting. So obviously your choice. The favorite for me, of course, is still earth. But fire and air elementals both have a high dex modifier in this form, so that's a really nice increase for them. You're considered normal human size with elemental body 2, so you're not teeny tiny, so you're not getting any buffs that way, but you don't have any penalties, as you'll see with elemental body 3. So again, another reason I like this one between the 3 of the ones you have access to. Earth is still my favorite because, again, it's a solid strength buff at this point, and again, you get to melee. The downside with these spells, and this is still applicable here, is you don't have your armor and you don't have whatever weapon you would normally have in your little fisties. The downside is, especially for like a sword saint, remember you are married to that weapon, so you have to get all that armor and the beautiful buffs that you get for being a sword saint only work when you have that weapon in your hand. Well, a sword saint could pick unarmed strikes as their weapon of choice. So basically they're monkeying it up basically and punching the shit out of stuff. Sadly, 3 of these 4 forms, even though you are brawling like crazy with your fucking weird elemental body, they don't consider them punches. They consider them slams, I think is what they call them in the game. So the fire, air, and water elemental don't have that, but the earth elemental, for whatever reason, still considered to have fists. Probably because he's a physical, rock monster looking thing. So his 2 attacks that he gets in this form are considered unarmed strikes. So if you were a sword saint with unarmed strikes as your weapon of choice, your chosen weapon, turning into an earth elemental will not fuck you over. And that's, again, another reason I kind of like the earth guy. He is cool, plus he is tougher, I think, than the others, so to speak, in that he has a higher natural armor class bonus when he's in this form. That's not to say that the fire and the air elemental aren't solid choices, because, again, remember, they have high dexterity modifiers as well as some of that natural armor bonus. So with that increase, you'll see that those guys are particularly tough too. The water elemental goes a completely different route. While they have natural armor, they have no dex or strength bonus at all. They do have a high con stat, so if you need to just absorb a shit ton of fucking incoming damage or be protected from cold, the water elemental is your choice. The other thing to point out here is, of course, you are protected from the various elementals. So again, fire protected from fire, air from electric, earth elementals protected from acid, water from cold. You're also immune, quote unquote, to a variety of things because you're technically not alive in this form. So with things that would kill you because you have blood, for example, you don't have blood in these forms. So another reason that you can use this to great advantage in the game, at least in a couple scenarios. So again, a pretty cool thing here. I will point out, of course, that you do have a limited number of attacks per round. That doesn't mean you can't cast them. Like haste on yourself. Remember, you have the ability to cast spells in this form. So if you cast haste on yourself either before or after you change, you would get another attack around. So there is a chance to get you back up to like 2 to 3 attacks around. And I think at this stage you do have 2, and then going to 3 then with haste would be a solid upgrade. Fire Snake, another AoE damaging spell. And weird as this one is, I'd rather have Cone of Cold than this one, even though Cone of Cold is not teammate friendly. We already mentioned how I'd rather have acid, not splash, what the hell is it called? Spray, over Cone of Cold or Fire Snake because of the extra tick of damage. This one is teammate friendly. You would think that, well, gee, wouldn't you want to have one that's teammate friendly? Yeah, but it's also a 50-foot line, just like acidic spray. It's just not, I don't know. It's not impressive to me. It's a good spell, and I don't mind it being teammate friendly. There's nothing wrong with that. But none of these spells hurt me anyway, so I'm reasonably certain I'll be fine. I know that's a terrible explanation, but it's, again, the same decent range as acidic spray. Hard to line up because it's a beam like acidic spray is. so it's not that massive cone that you got with Cone of Cold. So Cone of Cold's easier to set up for multiple targets. Does the same amount of damage, and there's more, in my opinion, that you can do with it. Example being the Rhyme meta magic effect. Of course, you can intensify this one too and get a solid amount of damage. And again, if you're a fire guy, Fire Snake Man for the win, it's nice. Greater Bladed Dash. This is a new spell. This is one that's just like Bladed Dash, but again in a AoE format. It's a solid line. It's only 30 feet, but it's decent. You can hit multiple guys with this. Downside is it says specifically that it's not teammate friendly. Oh, I forgot to actually check that, and I didn't realize it until I typed it in. But I would trust that it isn't. But always verify. I mean, don't just assume that I'm telling you the right way here. I mean, I try my best, but I do forget some things. But if it's not teammate friendly, that's dangerous, and it should hit with the weapon that you're swinging with. So if your weapon is buffed like to the fucking nines, it's on fire and it's electric and it's cold like all Magus can do, has the Bane property on top of that, you can do a whooping. You can get a shit ton, because there's no cap, from what I see, for how many guys you can hit other than how many can fit within that line. So if you have 5 guys there, you can get 5 attacks in a round off on that shit, 1 per guy. And that's pretty fucking cool. There's no save, there's no spell resistance, it's just you teleporting through them and just whoopity whoopity whoopity. And of course you get a bonus to your swing equal to your spellcasting modifier, so intelligence or charisma depending on which type of Magus you are. And that's a solid fuck you to the bad guys. So the fact that it's not teammate friendly is probably the only real problem here, but I could see upgrading to this one as soon as possible on a solo build, specifically for someone that's doing weapon attacks, because you can have some serious goddamn fun with this. Overland Flight. This one's interesting because it's such a long duration. 1 hour per caster level is a solid buff. It only works on yourself. There's ways around that. But for what it gives you, I mean, the extra speed, the extra armor for melee attacks, the immunity to difficult terrain, and ground-based effects, that's huge. That's an amazing spell. Now let's talk about the self-buff only and the ways around that. There are feats in this game that allow you to take a Bonded Mind and Share Spell, I think is the example, an improved Share Spell, which will allow you to have, like, if you say you had an animal companion for some silly ass reason, you could literally buff the animal companion with personal effect spells like this one, where you cast a spell on yourself, you get half of the buff, meaning the duration is in half, and half of the duration goes to your pet. Well, we don't have pets, brother. Yes, that's true. However, you could have double dipped. Also, I think Bonded Mind allows you to do the same thing as far as a teamwork feat with teammates that have it. So if you're standing near a teammate that has that ability, then I can give wings to my ally, for example. And again, I could be wrong on that one, but I think I remember reading that. Definitely works on the pets though, and that's pretty freaking cool. Vampiric Channel Shield, the last one for level 5. Again, my disdain for spells that rely on me being hit, but this is actually one that's not so bad in that you get hit and you get healed at the same time. So it's only a quarter of the healing, but if they're doing minimal damage anyway, you might actually heal up full from it, which is kind of fucking funny. It doesn't heal a ton of damage. That's 1d6 plus 1 per caster level. For whatever reason, they won't let you intensify this spell, which seems a little weird to me, because it does cap out at caster level 15, even though you clearly go to cast level 20. But it's a teammate-friendly AoE damaging spell in so far as the more bad guys that hit you, the more damage that they take. So there is that. There's no spell resistance associated with this one. It is a lame amount of damage. I mean, let's just be clear on this, that you're dealing to these guys 1d6 plus 1 per caster level up to 15, so we're talking 16 to 21 damage. And while that sounds horrible, and it certainly is, remember that's per guy that's hitting you, and maybe you're paralyzed. And this is your only way of damaging the motherfucker that paralyzed you until you can break out of that paralysis. So on a solo build, this would be something that I would look more into, about whether I need it or like Fire Shield or Shield of Dawn, something like that, to just make sure I have some sort of protection for when the poop hits the fan and I'm just locked in place. Because if they come over and try to coup de grace my ass, I could be dying real goddamn fast. I think sadly this game doesn't do coup de grace on you, and I say sadly in that I don't want that to happen, but that just means that the AI hasn't had that part coded into them to have that ability, which kind of is sad. I mean, let's just say it. I mean, if you're doing it to them all the goddamn time, they should be able to do the same to you. I've always maintained. I really wish, and I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I really wish that the modders, and the devs, I should say, for the next game, Wrath of the Righteous, looks into the AI a little more. If we're using stuff like paralysis spells and curses and things like that, and they have a cleric or someone on their team that should be able to counter those things, they should have one of those slotted up so that, you know, anytime that someone gets paralyzed, like the main wizard or whatever will go over it, or the cleric will go over and do like freedom of movement, or, you know, like dispel that effect on them or whatever. I think there should be more of that, but that's just me. Level 6 spells. Acid Fog. We have, of course, the 3 of our physical ability buffs. So again, we got the Bear Strength, Bull's Endurance, and Cat's Grace. All 3 of them available at this level. Beast Shape 4, Chain Lightning, Disintegrate, Dragonkind 1, Elemental Body 3, Freezing Sphere, Greater Dispel Magic, Hellfire Ray, Sirocco, Stone to Flesh, Transformation, True Seeing, and Umbral Strike. And again, not a whole lot of new stuff in here. We do have Freezing Sphere as being the only one that I can see. Of course, Beast Shape 4 has had some changes. We'll talk about that. Same with Acid Fog. So again, we'll talk about that when we get to them. As far as how they break down by school, we have a decent number of evocation spells and a ton of transmutation spells. Some even with saving throws. Even one necromancy spell in there with a saving throw. Conjuration spell shows up, but no save, which is nothing wrong with that. Don't let the fact that there's no save associated with it be like, oh my god, I shouldn't pick this one. No, it's actually Acid Fog is a pretty good spell. So again, we're all over the place here, and again, true to most Magus levels, we have no enchantments, as always, and very few, if any, illusions, and again, no illusions on this time. So illusionists and enchanters really aren't, this isn't really your cup of tea. It's not to say you can't make one for a Magus because of your access to wizard spells in various stages, but it's still one of those that makes it a lot more difficult. Acid Fog, now this is a lame damage over time, 2d6 of damage. It has a decent range. It's a nice cloud. No spell resistance. You gotta love all those things. Again, the conjuration spell. Not that it matters because, again, no saving throw, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're already a conjurer, maybe you had like spell specialization where it lasts longer now. Or you got Mage Tattoo where it's a higher caster level, which means, again, because your caster level could be 21, you could actually have it last longer because of that. There's a cloud effect that they've added to this, so basically the equivalent of being inside a solid fog spell, which gives no ranged weapon attacks in or out of the cloud. That's fucking actually pretty damn cool. Your slower speed in the cloud, of course. There's melee penalties in the cloud. It's not the same miss chances. It's just like a -2 to your swing and your damage. But again, that could be used for good effect if you and your team were protected from the acid. Remember, 2 to 12 is the range. So it doesn't take much to be immune to it, but you definitely want to be. It's not teammate friendly, of course, as a result. Notice it says that you can use magic ray spells in and out of the cloud, and that's still a thing. But notice this part here. Shooting out of the cloud, I can't tell you what happens inside the cloud because everything I tested, again, died so damn fast I couldn't test. But if I was in the cloud and protected from it and shooting someone outside of the cloud, I had a 50% miss chance with those ray spells. I would assume the same is applicable in reverse. That means that guys ray spelling you, you're all equivalent of having total concealment or basically having displacement on. So again, you could hide, quote unquote, in the cloud, which is pretty goddamn cool. I like that mechanic. I like this spell, original version of this spell even, because this was the one where you could literally stay in the cloud, and if you were, again, protected from it, but if you were paralyzed for whatever reason, the bad guys have a habit, once you're paralyzed, of charging your ass. They don't coup de grace you, but they come over and know that you're weakened, and therefore it's easy to melee the shit out of you, so they'll run up in that shit. So if you set this up in advance and are in the cloud and protected, when they run in, they will constantly take some damage. And I've actually won fights, as sad as it is to say, in the Tenebris depths, on an actual playthrough, where I was running solo, and I couldn't beat these guys because they're paralyzing my ass, and I didn't have freedom of movement scrolls with me. So I was like, well, fuck this. How do I get through with what I have? And it finally dawned on me that I can protect myself from my acid fog, cast this on the ground, open the goddamn door, and as soon as that son of a bitch paralyzed my ass, they all charged me and took enough ticks of damage that they died. And I managed to get through the fight that way. It's cheesy as hell, but you know what? They paralyzed me, so fuck those dudes. So it's a decent spell, and again, it's usually one that if I can't pick it up, I kind of feel bad. And again, the damage is lame. I cannot stress enough how lame the damage is. But for what it did, damage over time wise, it was pretty goddamn cool. We have another one of those coming up that's even better damage over time, but it's not teammate friendly to the extreme. I mean, well, this one, we can protect ourselves from it. This other one, no. Well, that's not true. We probably could. Again, our AoE buff spells, better gear out there by this point, but basically a +4 to you and your team and your pets. Or sorry, I shouldn't say pets because I don't think it works on your pets. It works on your animal companions because they're considered actual beings. If you like did summons, for example, you know, like your animal summoning spells, that doesn't buff them, I don't think. This is a damn shame too. Beast Shape 4, again, the same problems and uses that we saw with Beast Shape 1, 2, and 3. Except in this case, you turn into a Hodag or a large winter wolf, which obviously is good for tripping and probably some elemental damage and protection. Oh, Hodags are just like mean sons of bitches. By and large, though, again, by this stage, you're level 6 spells. That means you're caster level 16. You got 3 attacks around already. There's no real reason to change into these forms, in my opinion. Again, and at this level, if you're picking a spell, again, we're talking about for like an Eldritch Scion, where the spell picks are limited. Now, I would pick Transformation, which you have access to at this level, which we'll talk about later, versus something like this. It's a much better spell. You still can't cast spells in that form as well, but at least you're Ginswing Chef like a son of a bitch at that point. So, again, difference being the Transformation doesn't last as long, I suppose. Chain Lightning, a solid AoE spell, teammate friendly. It's got the best range in the game, long range. Really nice damage. You can intensify this with some serious effort. Plus, it's already a level 6 spell, so we need to talk about that. But it's a save for half damage spell, reflex save. Let's talk about how you can intensify this, because again, 20d6 is the max. That's at level 20. However, if you did things like Mage Tattoo, which is available with these mods, that increases your caster level by 1 for that specific spell focus school, perhaps evocation. So now you could be level 21 for all evocation spells. So that could get you above 20. We could do spell specialization if you had spell focus and evocation for this specific spell. That'd be 2 more levels, so now you could be up to level 23, technically speaking. You could do spell perfection, I think is what it's called, or perfect spell, something like that, which is a lot of effort to do it, but you could do it. And it doubles these effects. So instead of it being 3 caster levels higher, you can get like 5 or 6 caster levels higher. So you could be at like a 25 or 26 d6 potential there. And I would believe that Intensify would work at that point. Now again, you're already level 6, so how would you intensify it, brother? I mean, well, there's metamagic rods for one. The other is there are traits in the game that could take the metamagic that you add. Remember, it's always a higher caster level, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on which one you pick. So there's a trait out there that can pick one spell and one spell only, and you could pick Chain Lightning, where if you add a caster level, or sorry, a spell level to it, so instead of it being level 6, it's level 7, which you cannot cast, it lowers it by 1. So it goes up 1 and then back down 1. So it's still technically level 6, and you can intensify that, or rhyme, or extend. Anything that increases at 1 can actually be neutered, is what I'm telling you. And in this case, intensify then could work. And that could be kind of cool, and especially for someone like Ragangar on your team, because Reg, for those of you that don't know, he's a blue dragon Eldritch Scion bloodline. Because he's associated with electricity, he does an extra point of damage per die. So at 20d6, that's 20d6 plus 20. So that's a minimum, even if he rolls all ones. He's doing 40 damage, AoE style, minimum. And less than impressive that may be, eventually, and spoiler alert here, he has a cloak that he gets as part of one of his quests that you complete. And that cloak gives him another 1 point of damage per die. So now instead of it being 20d6 plus 20, it's 20d6 plus 40. Then there's a necklace that you can give him that can give him another plus 1. So 20d6 plus 40 now becomes 20d6 plus 60. Then, if you want crazy, he has a cloak, or a robe that you can give him that does the same goddamn thing. So now we're at 20d6 plus 80. So even if he rolls all ones, he's doing like 100 points of fucking damage. 50, of course, on a save. That's pretty goddamn good, and that's minimum. Now think about maximum. 20d6 maximum now is 120 plus that 80. So we're talking 200 AoE damage. There's not a lot of fucking things in this game that is sucking up 200 points of damage a couple times in a row. Just saying. This pretty much wipes out rooms. So it's kind of a stupid build, but you can have some serious fun with it. I'm just saying. But again, solid spell, and it's safe for half damage, the reflex problem that we always have. But you can have some serious fun with this spell. Disintegrate, single target spell, ray spell. Really good damage, again, 40 d6, best case scenario here. Of course, can be intensified with effort. As we just mentioned, it's got a decent range, medium range for a ray spell is actually pretty good. You can crit with it, sneak attack with it. If you're channeling it through your weapon, you can't sneak attack, but you can crit. So then again, that's only for ranged weapons, like with the Eldritch Archer. But it's a save or suck spell, but at least it's a save or something happens spell. So even if they make the save, they still take some damage. It's lame, 5d6, but yeah, it's better than 0. And it is not a reflex save, which is a big fucking boost as far as I'm concerned. Of course, it can miss, whether it's through your weapon or just as a ray spell itself, so there's always that. But as far as a nice transmutation beam, you can't get much better than 40 d6 of fucking damage on somebody. Dragonkind 1. While normally I would say don't turn into forms, I wouldn't for a Sword Saint, but for all the other Magus, this is not the worst form ever. You're stronger, you have more con, you don't have a penalty to dex yet, you're considered, as weird as it is as Dragonkind 1, you're considered human size. I don't fucking understand that for the life of me, but you're considered medium-sized form in this form. So you have no penalties to your swing, you're not easier to hit because you're bigger or anything like that. Nope. You're just stronger and have more constitution, have more armor. You lose of course, your armor and your weapon in this form, but they replace it with a bite attack, 2 claw attacks, and 2 wing attacks. So you get 5 attacks still. So there is that. You can turn into a variety of different dragons, not all of the ones in the game, but there's at least like 5 or 6 or so to choose from. And that represents all of those 4 elements: your acid, your fire, your cold, your electric. You get a free dragon's breath based on the weapon or the dragon type you turn into. You have some resistance or immunity to damage to the element of the form of the dragon. You have wings, and therefore you're immune to difficult terrain. Again, there's a variety of positives here. And of course, you can cast while in dragon form. And I think you always could. I don't remember not being able to cast in dragon form. So if the modder did it, great. If not, then it was always there. Point is, it's a really decent upgrade, and it's worth having, in my opinion. And those 5 attacks, I mean, let's just say it, 5 attacks is just murder on the bad guys. You can cast this spell and get yourself like some Sense of Vitals up where you do some sneak attack damage as an invisible dragon that's human size, and you're getting 5 d6 of damage per smackdown, and there's 5 smackdowns you can do in a goddamn round. That's pretty fucking cool. So again, Dragonkind 1, pretty fun spell. Elemental Body 3, this is actually my worst of the 3 elemental body spells we're going to talk about. You may say, well, is it 1 like the lowest? It's the lowest, but remember, you're teeny tiny in that form. So it's a size bonus to your swing, size bonus to your armor, because it's easier for you to hit those big fat heads and it's harder for them to hit you. So again, there's a lot of pluses coming from even Elemental Body 1. Elemental Body 3, you're bigger. It means it's harder for you to hit them, and it's easier for them to hit you. And why would you want that? Same general principle that we had as well. Again, you do not have a weapon or armor in these forms, with the exception of the Earth Elemental, who has fisties. So again, if you were unarmed striking it as like a Sword Saint, this would be not the worst thing ever. I think you get like more attacks, or the attacks hit harder or something like that, obviously, because you're a bigger form. But the reason that I hate this one compared to the other 2, and I know I've mentioned this in a previous video, but just to recap here, Fire and Air Elemental, for example, get Dexterity as they upgrade. Water Elemental gets Con as they upgrade. Earth Elemental always gets Strength as they upgrade. And in this form, they don't get more of the same. If they gave them more Dexterity and Strength and Con, that makes sense to me. They don't. The Fire and Air Elemental suddenly get Strength. Who gives a shit? They're already Dex-based attackers. Why would you want more Strength? I mean, yeah, it's appreciated. It's more damage, but who gives a fuck? Same with the Water Elemental. They go from having a lot of Con, a lot more Con, and then in this form they get the same amount of Con and a little more Strength. Again, who cares? Why do I need to hit harder in this form? It makes no sense. The Earth Elemental, you can give me more Strength, but sadly they don't. They give you more Strength in level 1. The level 2 version, they give you even more Strength, and now in this version they give you more Con. At least for that one, I can make the argument, well, at least I'm getting more HP, more Fortitude. There's a reason to want to be Earth Elemental again. But the other guys, it's just smacks of bad planning. I don't know. And I'm sure they're just following pen and paper rules, but it's just one of those where I'm like, fuck that. I want more decks. So this is a weird one. And again, you get the same immunity to a variety of things because you're not alive in these forms. You get protection from the element of whatever element we're talking about. There's stuff that can be done here, and of course, thanks to the modern, we can cast spells in these forms, and that's the only real reason that this is worth the damn, in my opinion. Freezing Sphere, new spell, solid AoE damaging spell. It's not teammate friendly, but it's a reflex save for half damage. It's got a decent range on this thing. Really nice burst, area of effect, 30-foot burst. It's fucking huge. You can intensify this one or rhyme it, of course, as well. But remember, it's level 6 already, so we're talking about magic rods or using that trait trick. But for those of you that don't know, again, that rhyme effect is the one where if it does cold damage, and it is, they take cold damage and they get entangled by it. So that's, again, a massive penalty for bad guys and a huge area of effect. That's pretty useful. Greater Dispel Magic. Nothing really to say about this one other than the real limitation on the fact that you can't remove AoE effects. You can either A, use this AoE style to remove a single spell from multiple bad guys, or you could use it to remove many spells from one bad guy. So if you have like one wizard in the fucking back or cleric or whatever who's buffing to the fucking nines before the fight even starts, fuck this prick over with Greater Dispel Magic, the single target use. It'll strip a shit ton of spell buffs probably off the guy, and it just goes through the list and just keeps checking and working on down the list. So again, really nice in that regard. I still prefer the lesser version of the spell, just Dispel Magic, because you can remove AoE effects. And that's just me. But I could still see the use for this one. Hellfire Ray, amazing spell. 3 beams, shoot out. At best case scenario, of course. It's a great damaging spell, 15d6 of damage per beam, best case scenario. It can be intensified. I haven't really tested this out other than that it is available. And that would mean that you would do still 3 beams, but you could do up to 20d6 of damage per beam. The reason I haven't tested this out is not that I didn't test it. This one doesn't roll dice. Rephrase. The dice is in the game, of course. They roll the dice behind the scenes. When you look in your combat log, because the damage is being split between fire and unholy or whatever the fuck it's called, it's 2 different damage types. It just gives you the final number and then a /2 to let you know how much damage of fire it did and how much damage of unholy damage or whatever it did. And that's kind of a bummer. I suppose if I wanted to test this, or if you guys wanted to test this to prove to yourself that the intensified work, again, because it's level 6, it's fiddly, you'd have to maximize it and intensify it. If you can do both those things, which you can do with like a magic rod and a maximized magic effect that you have from the Magus Arcana. Sorry, I had to think for a second. If you did that, activate the maximized magic, have the intensified meta magic rod on, cast this spell, and look for, so it would be what, 20d6, it'd be 120 divided by 2. If you see that in the combat log, then you know that you can intensify this as it says. And again, the fact that it allows you to intensify it, make it a level 7 spell, to me means it probably should work. But again, I couldn't test it because I wasn't paying attention at the time. And because this is a race spell, of course you can crit and sneak attack. Of course you can miss. You can channel it through your ranged weapon if you're an Eldritch Archer only, which means you can crit but not sneak attack with your weapon. It's a solid spell. And the fact that, again, it's half fire damage, half unholy, means that if they're fire immune or fire resistant, they still take some fucking damage, which is always fun. So it's one of those where, like, no, fuck you, hitting you with Hellfire Ray, you piece of shit. But it does have that lame range, I suppose, would be like one of the real downsides, I'd say. Sirocco. This is the other dot I was mentioning before. It's an okay AoE dot. I mean, it's better than the 2 to 12 points of damage from Acid Fog, because it's 4d6, so 4 to 24, plus 1 point per caster level. It doesn't cap out, doesn't say that it caps out. So again, if you intensify this one, you probably could get it up to like a 24, 25 extra points of damage on the side. That's not bad. That's actually pretty consistent, and since it's a damage over time, that's a lot of extra damage you're adding to your plate. It's an evocation spell, and the reason I point that out is because while there's a save for half damage and no prone effect because it knocks them on their ass, there's no reflex save. It is a fortitude save, which is unique, or at least very rare anyway, for an evocation spell. So this is nice because you get those little ninja bastards and they're reflex saving out of all the damage. And I'm only taking half damage even if I fail. Fuck you, no, fuck you, back. Sirocco spell on your face, you son of a bitch. Fall to the ground and take damage. So there's cool. The neat thing about this one is that every time they get hit, they get exhausted. If they're fatigued. If they're already fatigued, they become exhausted. Now, of course, they'd have to be immune to that effect to be able to stand in this shit and not have a real problem with it. You'd have to be immune to fire or highly resistant, I'd say, at least to fire, so that you could stand in this and kind of quote-unquote hide in the Sirocco yourself. It's possible. It is possible in this game to be immune to fatigue and exhaustion and immune to fire. So there's ways for you to set it up, but I don't think there's a way for you to be immune to the knockdown effect. I suppose you'd have to have like this a really good fortitude save, but there's always that potential that you roll a 1. But again, if it came to that, like if I was like in a battle, much like we said with the acid fog, where the son of a bitch could paralyze my ass and they're gonna come over and kick my ass, if I could set myself up with the immunity to fatigue / exhaustion and the immunity to fire, I might stand in this cloud to the point where, like, even if I fall down, so what? I'm already paralyzed. Who gives a shit? I'm down on the goddamn ground. They're going to come and kick my ass anyway. Let them come into the cloud. Let them get tired. Let them get exhausted. Let them get constant damage falling on their ass and just damage, more damage. It's a fun spell. And it's usually used by me as a 1-2 punch. I usually throw this on the ground, and it's the same size as not only Acid Fog, but it's also the same size as things like Obsidian Flow and Tar Pool. Spells that we don't have access to, I don't think, but we get them on our free spell picks. So it's the same size. I don't know, it might even be the same size as Web, now that I think about it. So there's plenty of ways for you to slow them down in the Sirocco, because weirdly, Sirocco does not slow them down. It just knocks them down. You would think that it'd make them move slower into this massive windstorm that's kicking up, or knocking them down, I should say. But it doesn't seem to. They literally walk right into it and fall the fuck down. And oddly, again, I know it's because of the evocation spell, but oddly, the fact that it's like solid heat, the furnace, this is a blast, a furnace hot wind is blasting downward is what it's described as. It's still spell resistant. It's just, again, one of those that just bugs me. It's like, really? How the hell is that spell resistant? But I guess, whatever. It's a solid spell, though. And it's one that, when I can't pick it, much like Acid Fog, it kills me. As an Eldritch Scion, where I'm like, wow, really? I can't pick one of the best AoE spells that we have? Between this, Chain Lightning, and Acid Fog, Chain Lightning, of course, is the best just for flat-out damage. But if you measure the damage over time of this fucker, if something can be consistently held in the effect, this one will actually outcompete Chain Lightning. And how weird is that? You know what I mean? And again, other effects, the knockdown, the fatigue, the exhaustion, that shit that Chain Lightning don't do. Now, yeah, Chain Lightning, it's a one and done. You cast a spell and zap. That's why it's appealing. It's instantaneous damage, not damage over time. So there's that too. But again, the Fortitude save versus the Reflex save. Again, I like this one more than I like Chain Lightning, usually. But if I'm hard-pressed, it's hard to turn down 20d6 of AoE damage that's teammate friendly. Let's just say it. That's a nice spell, Chain Lightning. So it's, again, those are the top 3 AoE spells though at this level. I mean, you really have to pick and choose, and it really sucks that you have to pick and choose. Stone to Flesh, it's a terrible spell. You just grab them in scroll form and just keep them in your fucking person. Quite frankly, no one slots this shit. If, for one, you can't cast them yourself if you're already turned to stone, so it's useless against for a solo build. And if it's on a team, there's other people that, like clerics or whatever, that may have access to that one anyway. And even if they don't, you keep it in the scroll form. When someone gets paralyzed, the fight's over. Obviously, you're not using it in mid-fight. That would probably be crazy. The fight's over. You take the people that have been turned to stone, you walk over to them, cast the spell from a scroll, and poof, they're back on the team. Yay, yes. But this is a weird-ass spell to even include. And they honestly, it pisses me off in the fact, quite frankly, that they didn't have the reverse spell. Flesh to Stone? Really? Fucking come on, devs. What the fucking hell, man? That's the spell. That's the one you wanted as a transmuter. Fuck you. Die. Nope. They gave it to the bad guys, though. Or at least a Flesh to Stone effect, anyway. Transformation. Amazing spell. You know about this one from my other videos, I'm sure. Again, you can't cast spells in this form, but this is a last-ditch effort spell. It doesn't have the best duration ever, but literally by the time you're getting this up, you're doing pretty good for yourself. It's for the fight. You got the poop hit the fan. You ran out of spells. This is like the last spell you have to cast, and you're just like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, transformation. Time to bust out some knives and Ginsu Chef, man. So it does what it's supposed to. The buffs, the bonus to strength, dex, and con, the +4 is crap. And I don't mean that way. I mean +4 is nice. By now you already have gear that's giving you that or better, more likely than not. The natural armor bonus is nice. And notice that's natural armor class, not natural armor class enhancement. That means it stacks. So that's nice. That's an extra +4 to your armor. You get to wear your armor still. You get to wear or use your weapons still. So for a sword stand, this is fucking money. And all it really does is increase your fortitude then and give you the ability to increase your BAB up to your caster level. So if you're caster level 20, you have a BAB at 20, baby. So you really can have some fun here. I never did try. Boy, that would actually be a good idea. Sorry. Let me explain my thinking. Because it says your base attack bonus equals your character level. Remember, our character level is always 20 at the end of the build. Well, that's not technically true. Remember, there's specialization and mage tattoo. I wonder if we get to like 22, 23 or so with this spell. It'd be kind of weird. You'd have an extra attack around. You can go from 4 attacks around to 5. You'd have a BAB at like 23. That can't work. Try it though, guys. Let me know if you do that shit, because that'd be fucking funny as hell. Just to recap on that, you would need spell focus transmutation, mage tattoo for transmutation spells, and then you would need to be level 20, a purist, all the way to 20 as an Elder Scion, for example, or a Magus in general. And then you'd want to get spell specialization for the transformation spell only. And if you did that, you'd be 3 levels higher for this particular spell. So at level 20, you'd be a caster level 23. If you cast this spell and you saw that your BAB was 23, oh, Jesus, that'd be fucking funny. And I know that's a lot of effort, but there's plenty of good reasons to want to do a transmutation build. So spell focus transmutation is not a bad idea. Mage tattoo works for all transmutation spells where it increases your caster level. That's not a bad idea. The spell specialization, that's probably overkill, but again, it's 2 levels higher. That's what gets you from a 21 to a 23. I'll take that shit if it works. And that can be fun. That can be real fun. But again, this one is really, like I said, last ditch effort. It's the, oh shit, what are we going to do? We're out of spells. We should have camped. And this is all I have left. And fuck it, time to transform and be the fighter that you always wanted to be, basically. And remember, as a Magus, you're already a pretty goddamn good fighter. Why not be better? Yeah, you're out of spells, but you can't cast spells in this form anyway. So this is the last spell you keep in your back pocket. That's really the reason we use this spell. So it's, again, a solid choice. Thru Sing. This one's actually broken. I don't know if I did something wrong, but I tried it like a few times yesterday with my Eldritch Archer build. I was casting on myself to see if I could, because the idea is that you ignore blur and displacement effects and see invisible creatures. So it's seeing visible but more. The reason I was worrying about the blur displacement effects is those clouds that you stand in. That's 20%, 50% concealment depending on what we're talking about. I was hoping that if I had Thru Seeing on, I could ignore the 50% miss chance with like the ray spells. And instead, I cast Thru Seeing on myself, and then I somehow, don't ask me how, somehow my character took that as cast a spell on yourself, and then shoot yourself with your bow and arrow 5 times in the face. And I was like, what the fuck you doing? So I don't know what's happening here, but I think it's busted, which is a damn shame. Because I actually like this spell. You can cast it on other people as well. And again, if you cast it on a teammate, because it's what you're supposed to do, you were a teammate, you cast it on a teammate, and then I'll target the teammate with my bow and arrow and shoot that son of a bitch. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? So I don't know what's going on. But that's clearly broke. I don't know why. It didn't used to be that. It's what has to be the mods that fucked it up. So I don't know what's going on there. It might be, I hate to say this, it might be that the modders have changed it without changing the tooltip, where they've decided that Thru Seeing means that if you see it, like there's an invisible guy over here, you cast a spell, click him, he's your target, now you can see him. That's not how it's supposed to be. It literally is a duration on you. You are getting the true sight, not taking away his invisibility or whatever. So maybe that's what's going on, but it's definitely borked, and I don't know what the hell's going on. And the icon doesn't even show up under your portrait anymore, so it's definitely fucked up. Umbral Strike, last spell at this level. Solid damaging spell, again another ray spell, 20d6 of damage. Another one of those race spells that do 2 different types of damage, so cold damage and negative energy damage, I want to say, is the other half. So again, if they're immune or resistant to cold, you're still doing some kind of damage to the son of a bitch, probably. It's got decent range for a race spell. Medium range is not bad. You can also have an effect besides damage. You can blind the target if they fail their save. It can, of course, crit, sneak attack. It's through my phone across the room. You can crit, sneak attack. Of course, if it's the ray, if you're shooting it through the weapon, it can crit through the weapon if you're using Eldritch Archer. It can, of course, miss. There's a save for half damage, but and no blinding effect, but there's no reflex save here. It's a fortitude save. Another reason you like this spell. Sadly, it is not considered a cold spell. I proved this to myself years ago, or a year ago. I falsely thought that you could buff it. Remember Rigongar, we talked about him with the chain lightning and how he's an electric dragon type, the blue dragon. I thought, well, maybe if you're the cold dragon type, like white dragon or silver dragon, you would do extra damage with this spell. Because it's cold damage, you do 1 point of damage extra per die for cold spells. This is not considered a cold spell. This is a mistake in my opinion. I keep forgetting the other part here. I just noticed it as well. It also ignores concealment, which is blur, 20% miss chance, but not total concealment. That's another reason to like this spell. So if you have those spiders, for example, that have 20% miss, and you're starting to piss you off, Umbral Strike the little fucking ass. Boop, that shit's gone. So kind of nice. But again, a decent race spell. And again, for a solid Raycaster build, I kind of like getting all the race spells myself. Having said that, that's all of the mega spells that I wanted to talk about today. Of course, we will finish up by talking about all wizard spells because they have access to level 1 through 6 at various stages of a mega build. But that's only when we talk about wizards and sorcerers. Next one, I said I was going to do cleric this time, and that was a mistake. I wanted to get all these subcasters done first, so probably going to do summoner or blood rager next. And I think we even have more than that. We got summoner, blood rager, inquisitor. There's an investigator, I want to say, that's out there. That's a caster type 2. Well, there's like witches, but I think they're strong. They're like wizards, and then they can get like caster level 9. So I'm trying to get the ones that are like level 6 spells or lower. Like the blood rager gets levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it should be easy to zip through those. And similar ones to what we've already covered as a Magus. But I want to cover them to show you what they have access to. If it's quick, if it's like I think it should be for blood rager, it should literally be more of the same. Like you saw this in my Magus spells, you just saw this in my Magus videos. I'll rehash them and then just say, and you saw this, and this is what I thought before, so it's still applicable now, probably. And just rush through those in probably 1 or 2 videos. Summoner gets all the way up to level 6. And then we have to talk a little bit about mechanic with summoners, because summoners, again, a new category that was added because of these mods. It gets new spells that are new because of their mechanic. They have not an animal companion, they have what they call an eidolon. An eidolon is kind of like an animal, kind of like a spirit, kind of like an elemental, just depends on which kind you pick. And you can upgrade them over time, but that's a different mechanic for a different time. But the summoner has spells that buffs the eidolon, and we need to talk about that. They also can heal the eidolon, or they can also steal health from the eidolon, or give their health to the eidolon. So again, you'll see spells that are very much focused on that extra pet buddy of theirs. And it just reminded me that not only is there summoners, there's also a spiritualist class, which is extremely similar to a summoner, as far as instead of an eidolon for a pet, they have a spirit as a pet, like a little ghost buddy that they can buff and attack and through that pet, which is kind of fucking cool. And that's another subcaster, I'm fairly certain, so we'll probably cover that one as well. Like I said, I want to get all those subcasters done first, because it builds on the wizards, the clerics, the druids, and all the other cool big caster types. As you'll see, it'll be like, yeah, we already talked about this, and it's cool. Take it, don't, whatever, and move on, and kind of rush through those 1 through 6 videos, level 1 through 6 videos, and get to the meat and potatoes of the new stuff, the 7, 8, and 9 spells. And that's basically the plan for the future, guys. But with that, my name is Brother Meat. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. What do you guys think about the mega spells? What's your favorite? Post that down below, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye now.